And that's why we have the economy and the world that we have now. If you look at it from the technology perspective, tell me an industry that has not been impacted positively by technology. You could not find one, even farming. Welcome to the Leaders in Tech podcast. I am your host, David Manzola. This podcast is dedicated to interview people, incredible people that are changing the world with technology through their leadership skills. I remember when I started the podcast, I did it because I was trying to look for leadership in technology and I couldn't find anything on the internet. And what a disservice we have that in the market, because technology is being built by people. And it doesn't matter how good AI becomes, it's still going to be people who builds our future. So today we have with us Paul. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I look forward to having a good conversation with you.
Paul, for the audience, can you tell me your full name? Where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so my name's Paul Donohoe. I live just outside London in an area called Surrey in the UK. I'm a Chief Technology Officer for a company in the US, and I'm also a business consultant for two other companies working with those organizations one is to develop a new app and the other is to upgrade their Salesforce implementation. So quite a portfolio of roles at the moment.
That's wonderful. And getting to the place where you are, it takes a lot of experience and a lot of errors and how to overcome those errors. And I was amazed when we were talking before we started recording in the podcast that the involvement of business analysis and listening to your clients or your internal clients is so important before you ever talk about technology. Can you tell me why you think like that, and give me a couple of examples of business analysis in your life?
Absolutely. So I've been working in information technology for 37 years, and I was very fortunate that I was given the opportunity to join AIG in 1986 as a trainee business analyst. And in those days, the concept of business analysis was very new. It's quite a new kind of concept. But we had some very sort of foresighted people that were at AIG. And what they learned and what they taught me is that, before you actually try and jump into a technology solution, start by understanding the need. Start by understanding what's motivating your customer to want a technology solution. Sometimes you might find that it's not actually a technology solution they need at all. It might be a process change. It might be something completely else, different. So don't make any assumptions about what's right for them. Start by understanding the market that they're working in, the challenges they're facing. Make sure you get to know what's really motivating them. And that's been at the core of how I've approached problem solving and developing both existing technologies and new technologies and implementing technologies. Start with the customer, understand their need. And then that helps you really have a good relationship, because it means you're talking their language at the very beginning. And it's much easier, I think, for business people to understand why a particular solution is appropriate for them. Once they have that context, they know that they've been through this journey with you. They know that you've taken an interest in their needs. And it's not just you're kind of telling them this is the answer and you must do it. They understand the why it's right for them. So business analysis provides a whole suite of tools which really, I think, give the business a much better outcome. And that's really what it's all about.
And you're completely right. In the business that I run, ISU Corp, we have a software consulting company building custom applications for different kinds of businesses. And the first thing we do is we bring in a senior business analyst. Before we talk about technology, before we do anything, the business analyst is the one that is driving the project from the beginning. Because a lot of the times our clients come with the solution, and because somebody told them about the specific technology, and we have to get them back and analyze what the problem is, what's the core that they want to fix or they want to improve. And a lot of the times it's not what they thought they needed, And it's because of that first stage where the business analyst takes their hand and really help them discover what they really need.
Yeah, and I mean, as you said, sometimes you have to understand the need in a broader context, and that does mean looking at the processes that they're performing. One of the things I found very early in my career, there was a tendency for a lot of development teams who didn't necessarily know business analysis or work with business analysts to basically automate the existing process. And one of the things you learn very early in your business analysis career is understand the as is. So what do you do today? And then you kind of look at, well, are there opportunities to improve that? And we saw this again and again in insurance. It's quite a complex product, but how do you underwrite? And the way that people were underwriting used to be in a book, and they were saying, well, let's automate underwriting. So what you typically do is the underwriter would give you their book, and they say, well, can you program that? But if you just did that, then the underwriting process would be lengthy. It would be lots of kind of checkpoints in there. It wouldn't be free flowing, and it'd be very, very hard to really automate something that's in a book. And around the mid 80s, direct writing was a new way of working, and that looked to completely change the way that we underwrite. It allowed you to score questions and to have conditional questions that would prompt. So it really made the whole process of quoting the price for an underwriting risk a lot quicker. And that came about because what we did is we looked at the processes that they were at the moment. We said, well, how can we improve these? And then what you do, you come up with the 2Bs. So you start to redefine how you might want to work. So you end up actually developing a solution based on the future state, not on the current state. And that really is a very simple kind of insight that we've kind of all gained over time. But it's amazing how often you see people automating what they do today rather than taking the opportunity to say, how do we improve what we do today? And let's automate the future. And that's just one example that you see often a lot of companies sort of going down the wrong route because they're not really taking the opportunity to think about the future state.
That's beautiful, and that's wise wisdom that it only comes with experience. So tell me, how did you get into technology to begin with? You said that you were hired as a training business analyst. Was that your first role? How did you landed that? What was in your mind? Did you really want to become a technologist or what?
No, I wanted to actually to go into sales and marketing, and I wanted to be in business, and I felt that sales was a really interesting area, and it just so happened that I got offered a job as a salesman at Philips, which was a big electronics company in Netherlands. And I was going to take that job. I thought this is going to be really good. It's a very sort of fast-moving industry. There were a lot of new technologies coming through. But then this trainee business analyst job came up with AIG. I'd never really thought about insurance. But when I went to the interview and they explained, what the role was and what I'd be doing, and they talked about where my career path could lead, it was a no-brainer because it gave me the chance to travel. So, I've worked all across Europe. I've lived and worked in the USA. I've been able to, work in Australia and in the Pacific Asia area. I've worked across insurance and banking and medical research. It's the business analysis skill sets that they talked about. You could see very early on that it would give you a very, very, interesting career, lots of different types of projects, lots of different types of products to work with, lots of different departments. So I've worked in marketing and sales and finance and obviously all the insurance areas. I've worked with, hardware and software. I've worked with some really amazing engineers. So really what attracted me to that role back in 1986 as a 21-year-old was the opportunities it would create. I think I could have had a good life as a salesperson in Philips, but the business analysis role just really kind of ticked all my boxes in terms of where it could lead. And as I said, I got to work in sales and marketing, but not as a salesperson, but as someone that was helping them redesign the sales process. And that was really, really good fun.
That is incredible. And for the audience, from 21 years old now to being, as the senior technology officer for a corporation in the USA, traveling the world, this is how exciting it is to choose a technology path. But not only a technology path, but a leadership in technology path.
Yeah.
Right. And there is a clear definition. I remember, I was brought up as a software developer. I fell in love with computers in 1986. I wrote my first commercial software in 1989. But I remember when my mentor told me, okay, this is what you need to decide. Are you going to be on the technology path all your life and staying as a single contributor, or you're going to step up and become a leader? And I thank God that I actually chose the leadership path. And there's nothing wrong to staying as a technologist, but for me, life is more fulfilling when I get to inspire other people.
It's interesting because the term influencer has only really been used in the context of social media in recent years. If you think about what we've been doing, David, throughout our career, we've been influencers from day one. People come to us for advice. They say, I've got a problem. How do I solve it? And what we've learned is how to engage with those people and take them on a journey, help them understand where they are today and help them understand what they could achieve. And the really fun part actually is them building that solution, implementing it, and then seeing exactly what change you've been able to engender. And for some, businesses and colleagues, it's been life-changing. They were sitting there frustrated. Their career wasn't going anywhere because they were stuck with all these problems. And particularly in the 80s, where we were kind of in this really kind of weird world where I remember joining AIG, we still had punch cards. We were still using sort of big mainframe computers. And I was at AIG through this transition from mainframe computing through into using kind of, personal computers and then, client server. And it was game changing. And I think the enjoyment that my internal customers had of using the new technologies, they found they were easier, they were quicker, they could do more, they could spend more time actually managing their customers and their staff rather than having to solve problems all the time with the technology. It was life-changing for them, and that's been one of the greatest kind of, I guess, benefits of going into this space. And as you say, it is. You do become a leader. It gives you an opportunity to be a thought leader as well, because you're able to introduce new ways of working and obviously new technologies, and deliver really, really valuable outcomes.
When was that first time where you had the opportunity to become a leader to somebody else or a group of people, and how did you handle that?
I think it really, the time that I remember it really becoming most obvious was, so I've been working in the States for AIG for about 2 years, and I had to come back because my wife's visa expired and we had to come back. And when I went to speak to the guys back in London at AIG, and they said, well, what do you want to come back and do? I'd been working, there's a technology, it was called screen scraping in those days. There's a company called Easel. And basically it was a kind of a GUI front end that you used to be able to run that sat in front of the old 3270 mainframe screens. And it allowed you to build a lot of kind of really great process efficiency. It made the process of collecting data quicker. You could validate the information better. It was really kind of a really big way in changing the way that people were going to interact with computing in the insurance company. And I was given the opportunity to come back and actually put a team together and take that technology and see how we could apply it across Europe, and see what benefits we could bring. So we had this great technology. We knew it would be really kind of a big change for the way people worked, and we were given an open book. They said, look, go and see the biggest problems you think you can solve with it. And that was the moment where I realized actually with that sort of approach of using business analysis as the sort of the start point, with a really cool technology, putting the team together and saying, this is how we're going to work. Let's go and find the high value problems that we can solve. And that was the first point I remember thinking, putting together a team with a really kind of clear vision about how we're going to work, what problems we can solve, and what value we want to deliver. That was the first point, which I thought, this is why I want to be a leader in these teams, so I can really make a change, because then I can take you or the customer through the whole journey. I couldn't, I wasn't just a cog in one part of the wheel. I was able to kind of orchestrate the whole piece. So that was very memorable.
That was one of the reasons why I started my own business, because when I was in corporate, it was beautiful, but a lot of the times we ended up adding extensions or modifying existing systems. And when I got to taste how to build a system from scratch and how to provide revolutionary solutions to my internal clients, I was like, I want more of this. That's why I started ISU Corp in 2005, because most of the clients that come with us, they come with an idea, or they are frustrated because maybe their business is going under, and we build solutions from scratch that takes them to the next level. And it's so exciting, exactly what you said, putting the team together, not knowing what to do. It's exciting, it's like you have this huge problem in front of you, or you have this technology that is promising so much, but you don't really know how to apply it or what's the best use of it. And being able to just analyze and go to the client and say, what, I think this is the right approach. You want to do a prototype, and then the prototype works, and then before you know, you're working with this multi-million-dollar project that is changing the world for this business.
Well, I think one of the things this led to ultimately, after AIG, I went to work for PwC. Then I had a year at Accenture, and during that time, a colleague of mine that was at PwC, a guy called Ben Goss, we kind of sat down and because we'd really worked in financial services for a long time, we thought, well, there's actually a real gap in the market for what we called automated financial advice. It's now called Robo-Advice. It was back in those days, it was quite an interesting sort of idea, but no one had really sort of figured out how can you take the process of getting advice on investments or pensions or mortgages and make it accessible and make it affordable. It was a dark art. And what we realized is that actually a lot of what people do is rule based. You kind of understand through experience how to solve problems, and you apply a whole set of rules. So the experience that we'd had, we'd spent a lot of time with customers, we're looking at their problems, but we're also consumers. So we found it difficult. You go to a financial advisor and you say, well, where should I invest my money? And then they would sort of come back and give you some answers, but you didn't really know kind of why or how, and it was expensive and it was time consuming. So one of the things that we did, we started a company and we built a rules-based engine which took data in from customers, a needs analysis. We analyzed it using sort of this rule-based technology that we developed. And then we're able to give personalized advice, but we're able to do it 24/7, on the internet. This is in the days when we had dial-up modems, so it was a little bit slow, but we could not believe how many people would actually use our service at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. The reason for saying this is one of the things that we learned from that experience is that technology can create whole new businesses and actually whole new industries. So, there's a lot of stuff about AI. AI is almost kind of like the third or fourth generation of what we were doing back in the early 90s. But it's very exciting because it's going to create a whole set of new business opportunities. So if anyone's listening to this that's kind of thinking, wow, I want to be in this space, understand the technology, but really look at what problems do we think this could solve and what business opportunities might it create. So that's the other thing that I've spent a lot of my time. It enabled me to become very entrepreneurial, like yourself. And I've had several businesses over the last sort of 20 years. where technology has enabled me to create businesses, and that's been really, really good fun as well.
And that's why we have the economy and the world that we have now. If you look at it from the technology perspective, tell me an industry that has not been impacted positively by technology. You could not find one. Even farming. I was having a podcast with another CIO last week, and he grew up on a farm. And after he became a technologist, he actually invented technology for the farming industry. And he's responsible for GPS automated machines, for example, that harvest in the fields. Stuff like he says, David, 95% of male Americans were hired by farms by the end of the 1800s. Now it's only 5%, and we have quadrupled our population. And we have so much produce now that we give it away because we overproduce, and it's all thanks in big part to technology.
Well, and also, I mean, I think technology is going to have to get us out of some of the holes we've got with climate change and some of the other sort of challenges that humanity's facing. And I know back in the sort of Victorian era, somebody said, that everything that has been invented, or could be invented, has been invented. But you look at what challenges we've got, and technology is going to have to come to our rescue again. So I think it's a very, very exciting time to be sort of in technology. And I think, and again, as I said earlier, people that have worked in technology, it forces you to think about different ways of working. And I think that thought leadership that we can bring to problem solving is going to be very, very useful and relevant to the current world as well.
Yeah, and people always get scared of change. Doesn't matter how hard our current process is always hard for people to change. Like they have this adversity to change. But when you start introducing new technologies and you make them realize how much easier it's going to be for their life after you go through the lump of having the change, you become the hero, right? Like when you were mentioning what you were doing with the bank, right, or with the insurance company, and you got this screen scraping technology. I bet when you finally implemented that, people were thanking you.
It's interesting you say. I mean, I'm working on a project right now where we're introducing change, and again, that's something you learn very early in your career, that you have to sell the benefits, not the features, and actually showing people that there's a positive improvement in their working life and maybe in other aspects to their life that the technology and the solution can provide is really, really important. That for me has been the anchor point of how you get people to embrace change, is get them to understand the benefit. So yes, we know that there's threats. We know that AI is people are talking about AI is going to replace people's jobs, and we understand that there's always that kind of threat aspect. But actually, let's look at some of the benefits. I mean, maybe that would free people up to have more spare time, or maybe it would free people up to achieve more with their current kind of working day. So I think that sometimes we forget to focus on the benefits. So that for me is one of the key things in change management, to get the customer to understand the positive outcome that you're going to deliver, and obviously help them understand, yes, there's going to be some changes, but if it's not for good, then clearly you wouldn't necessarily go ahead with it. So change management is absolutely one of our key responsibilities.
For sure. And people, for the audience, people don't understand that these major revolutions always bring the threat of losing jobs, but at the end it even creates more jobs, right? So if you look at from farming to the industrial revolution, farmers were freaking out. Oh, we won't have a job anymore. No, they just had their jobs got easier. They had to get retrained for sure. And it happened with the information technology revolution too, right? People thought, oh, computers are going to replace everybody. And it didn't. It actually created a whole bunch of new jobs that didn't exist before. Now, what's required though is for people that they need to step up and retrain themselves and refigure themselves out in the new economy. This is what's going to happen with AI. For example, my company, I know, so I have a company with a bunch of really high-end software engineers, architects, business analysts. I just gave them a manifesto 2 weeks ago, and I told them, guys, we are now an AI company. And if you're still writing code 3 years from now, you might be obsolete.
Yeah.
So what does that imply? I'm training my staff right now to interact with AI so that the AI can start writing code for them, so that they will become the AI specialists, where they can know how to interact with the artificial intelligence to quadruple their production, their productivity.
I think that's a really, really interesting point. I mean, again, if I go back to that really first example where we automated the underwriting process, what we realized, this is back in the 80s, is there's an old adage that says garbage in, garbage out. Yep. The data that's going into the processes that's being analyzed, and this is really true of AI, the quality of what comes out of AI is only as good as the quality of the data going into it. And we're seeing this, lots of examples that have been published recently. So I think you're right. I think one of the things that a lot of the underwriters and people in pricing, they had to retrain themselves to become data analysts. They had to really understand data. They had to understand patterns. They had to learn statistical techniques. They really had to kind of up their game in terms of looking at data modeling. And I think you're right. A lot of developers are really going to have to understand, if AI is going to be successful at producing programs, you've really got to be able to make sure that the algorithms are being trained with the right data. Make sure that data doesn't have flaws in it. You've got to then be able to analyze the outputs of it to see whether they're correct. So we're moving, kind of to a much more analytical type role when we're dealing with things like AI. Because it's so, I guess, fundamentally linked to the quality of data, both going in and out. So, absolutely right. If anyone's interested in getting into that, you've really got to understand data and start to study sort of data modeling and all the sort of technologies that go with that.
You're completely right. Now, from the developer's perspective, I remember in the 80s and early 90s to code a screen, an input screen, it will take me 3-4 days, because I had to write every single character on the screen. And then, UI UX came up, and now you had a graphical user interface, and now I had my screen design was done in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Do you think I want to go back and start typing where I should paint the pixels on the screen? Why? So the new technology didn't replace my job. All it did is it allowed me to work faster.
Yeah.
And it's the same. Like now, when we started introducing frameworks and object-oriented programming,
yep.
I remember when I had to write functions and procedures, and it was horrible. And the code looked like spaghetti. And if it was large enough, it was very hard to maintain. Now you have object-oriented programming. You have this paradigm shift where you can actually reutilize objects, and the objects become independent, and everybody can use them as long as they interact with them with their proper classes. And now all of a sudden, my programming abilities quadruple. So now it's the same with AI. It's exactly the same.
As a business analyst, I have dabbled with programming, and I was never a very good programmer. I just didn't have the patience for it. But one of the really interesting paradigms that I'm still kind of exploring is the low code, no code world. So as a business analyst, you're constantly seeing problems you want to solve, and then you're having to go to a development team and say, actually, can you program a solution for this? I wonder whether the AI world will allow business analysts to actually kind of, I guess, architect a solution and get the code written. So business analysts become, kind of a one-stop shop for, I can understand your problem, I can design a solution, and then I can actually get an AI-based algorithm to generate, a physical kind of technology solution, and then obviously I can work with the team to implement it. That's going to be an interesting idea, because there's a lot of interest in this kind of low code, no code, generally in the business analysis community. So I don't know if that's going to develop, but it's certainly, if we can generate computer programs using AI that is robust and reliable and well architected, then yeah, maybe the business analyst can actually, take the next step and actually deliver a solution. My gut feel is that at the moment it's a long way off, because the one group of technology people that I have immense respect for are the enterprise architects, the solution architects, choosing the right technology, choosing the right kind of structure for how you solve the problem technically. Is a skill set and a knowledge, and I wonder how AI is going to solve some of those problems. So that's going to be an interesting area.
But those are the key components that are going to be actually even more needed now.
Yeah.
So those roles, like the enterprise architect role, I think architecture is going to explode now. I think a business analyst will always require technologies in their side, but they're not necessarily going to have to write code in an editor.
That's right.
But their job is going to be different, like validating that what the AI is producing is correct, to your point, right? Or choosing the right outlet for the AI. To give you an example, right now we were hired as my company to write an AI solution.
And it's also
yeah. So we're writing this solution, this AI-based solution, to analyze blood samples, blood tests.
Yep.
So we have this large data bank of data results of blood being analyzed before, and this large clinic in Southeast Asia hired us to create AI-based solutions to do predictive analysis on their patients.
Yep.
So what did our enterprise architect do? He said, we're not writing this robot. We're going to utilize the robot that is already being built by Amazon, that is being in production for 3 years, that knows exactly what to do. So it's not that we're going to actually create the guts and the components of the robot. We're just going to utilize a robot that is in the cloud, that has been validated to be productive, so that we can create the right solution for our client. Now, that required an enterprise architect to have that solution.
Absolutely.
Create that decision making.
Right? I agree. And I think, the sort of enterprise architect, and, they're kind of like, the partner that you need to have alongside you as a business analyst, because again, they let you become aware of what's possible. And that understanding of what is possible technically is something that business analysts really must tap into. And as you say, I've been very fortunate to work with some amazing enterprise architects over the years, who introduced me to, as I said, very early on, this GUI technology, and then later on it was rules-based technologies, and then it got into kind of sort of rules-based process engines and so on. So understanding, that what's possible with technology is something you really benefit from working with enterprise architects. And they definitely think outside the box, because very often they can repurpose an existing technology, as you said, and apply it in a different way that someone had never have thought about, and it creates a whole set of new opportunities.
For sure. I was having another interview. This podcast is fabulous because it not only helps the audience, it doesn't only help you create credibility, it also helping me being aware of what's going on a lot faster than anybody else. I was talking with a very good friend of mine. We've been business partners in the past, and he's specializing on AI now. And after I had the interview with him on this podcast, is that I decided that I was going to change my company for an AI company. Listen to what he did. He asked the robot to write him a ping pong game.
Right. Yes.
Like the Atari's type ping pong game, and the thing wrote it like in 30 minutes. Then he compiled the game, and his compiler, and it had 3-4 errors on it. So it fed it back. It told the robot what the errors were and to fix them. And the robot went ahead and actually found the bugs and fixed it. And he had a functioning program within 2 hours. And then he says, I'm asking this robot to create a class now for me to create an object with these parameters. And the more I ask it, the faster it learns on how to do it better. When he said that, I'm like, okay, this is going to go faster than I thought, because now it's exponential.
Interestingly, David, the interesting thing about that example is you've got to ask the right questions.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so that knowledge, I mean, I think, well, the one thing that gives me confidence that AI isn't going to become too much of a threat sometimes is that it's only as good as the kind of the master. I mean, it is a slave technology.
Yeah.
So the role that we have to play is to guide it, by asking the right questions. It will make mistakes, and we still need that level of human intelligence to identify them. And then obviously we will then need to help the AI understand how to solve them. So you are right, the roles that we have in technology with AI as a tool set is really going to change. So that ability to express the questions correctly, and obviously, maybe less ambiguously, is going to be very important to get the most out of these kind of AI systems. But it'd be interesting to know how some of these systems have been trained. As I said, I do worry that a lot of the data that some of these kind of systems are being trained on, isn't necessarily that high quality, and that's something I think we really need to focus
I
on.
think that's the biggest issue that we have right now with this technology, that it requires large data sets, and these data sets live on the internet. And how do you validate whether is the correct information?
Yeah.
Like you said, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
If you have wrong data and you start believing the results of the AI, you could have a huge problem because it's going to be telling you lies based on incorrect information.
Yeah.
But you know how funny it is that I started the podcast saying that AI will not produce our future, it's going to be us. And I realized that it's actually leaders that will be still responsible to be the master of those technologies in order to produce better technologies for humanity.
Yeah, and I mean, I think don't forget as well that we still live in a world where any technology, or certainly if I'm talking about software, and this is certainly true of hardware products as well, we still have to test that they work. Yeah. So there is, there's a lot of discussion about regulation and compliance and oversight. Well, actually, in the sort of AI, application generated world, there's still a need to test that what AI has produced is functional. So we do actually have like this checkpoint that says, does it work? And we need to get really, really good at making sure that we can thoroughly test these applications and make sure they do in fact work. I worked in the medical research and medical device industry for 9 years. And there's a huge sense of responsibility that we have to make sure that any product that's going into the human, be that a pacemaker, whatever, it needs to work, it needs to be robust, it can't be toxic, etc., etc. We need to make sure that anything we're kind of generating in that AI world really is fit for purpose, and that's something again that I think that we need to not forget, that any development process has to have that acceptance testing and a really rigorous kind of validation that it is ready to put into the market before we kind of just say, we've solved the problem. Well, let's prove it first.
So if after our conversations you realize that we will always need exceptional leaders like you, we are always going to need business analysts that will define what is really needed to be developed. Yeah. And that's something that a human needs to talk with another human to figure it out, right? Yeah, if you are absolutely. A business owner and you say, I need a solution for this, but the solution is not what he thought it was, and he gave it to the AI, it's going to get something that is completely wrong. So the business analyst will always be needed. The tester will always be needed. The enterprise architect will always be needed. Yeah. I think the role of the software developer, it's going to be called still a software developer, but that doesn't mean that they're going to have to be typing on a computer keyboard, coding, but they're going to still have to supervise whatever the AI is producing for them.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Well, I think that's right. that word supervision, that is exactly where we're going, I think. That ability to control, guide, supervise, and take, have checkpoints along the way, make sure it's going in the right direction. Yeah, that very different role, but very exciting times, that's for sure.
Oh, it is for sure. Very exciting times for us. I mean, when I gave this speech to my team, they got excited, you know. They got excited. Everybody's doing research now. I mean, we've been building AI systems since 2010, by the way, to your point.
Well, yeah.
Artificial intelligence, just to get it clear, is nothing else than being able to have a machine make a decision for us on our behalf. Why is it artificial? Because it has been preset in an algorithm, right? So if you look at it, if a computer can run an if statement, that was the beginning of artificial intelligence.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Right? The only difference that we have now is that now we have the capability for those machines to create their own algorithms to learn by themselves without us having to type the next algorithm.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The so-called unsupervised machine learning.
That
really is the kind of definition of what the new AI is. But yeah, I think there's lots of flavors of AI, and it's obviously just two letters, but it can mean different things to different people. That's for sure. But you're right. Yeah, it's this ability for the machines to actually develop their own algorithms. That's really the step change in where the latest iteration of AI is taking us. But yeah, there's still a lot of work to do to make sure it's reliable. And it's affordable, as you say. The compute power required to process and analyze the data, the input feeds, is still absolutely colossal. So there's still quite a few challenges out there for us to solve. Becomes ubiquitous.
Paul, what would you tell somebody that their ultimate goal is to become a CIO or a CTO, or like a top leader in technology? What would you tell like a 35-year-old, 30-year-old person that is trying to get ahead in their leadership life?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we're always judged on what we deliver, and what we deliver is based on the quality of the outcome. So, my advice is, don't just get so hung up on the technology. First and foremost, you need to be a businessman. You really need to understand the value that your team and your department or your company is going to deliver to the market, and you need to be really clear on how you're going to deliver that value. So I think for any CIO, think like a businessman. Think about how you're going to solve it, how you're going to manage budgets, how you can deliver quality, how you can deliver good outcomes, and I think that is going to be, I think, really central to ultimately what you're able to do with and for your customers, and how people will measure you. Your technical knowledge, they're going to expect that. You don't necessarily have to have it yourself. I think you find that in your team members. But I think think like a businessman. Think about how you're going to solve the problems. That for me, I think, is the hallmark of a successful CIO. And then I think you can look back and say, I can actually measure what I delivered. I can measure the quality of what I did. These days, it's not necessarily being the most kind of clever technical person. I think it's much more how you lead, how you guide, and how you actually manage the process. So that would be my sort of counsel.
Beautiful. No, and it's so true. You have to think in business terms and know that whatever it is that your team is doing is adding value. It's adding massive value to your organization.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Paul, thank you so much. It's almost an hour went by. I could be talking to you for the whole week, I think.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Well, one last question before we finish the podcast. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Oh, wow. That's a really tough question. Well, it's the first thing that really came to mind is back in the early days of LinkedIn, you had to put a little strap line. And for me, it was like, make a positive difference.
Make a positive difference.
Yeah, because, why are we here on this life? Whether that's like, whatever you do with your life, I think, go and make a positive difference. Whether that's to solve people's problems, to have children, I don't know, to sort out how to sort of deal with climate change. But I think, make a positive difference would be my mantra.
That's fantastic. If people If everybody did that, we will live in a different world, wouldn't
I
it?
hope so. I hope so. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Paul. If people like to ask more questions about you, can they find you on LinkedIn? Are you on LinkedIn?
I am on LinkedIn. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you
Just
so
look
much,
me up.
Paul. Have a beautiful rest of the week. And this is your home. You can always come back to the Leaders in Tech podcast.
I
Blessings.
really appreciate your time, David. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.